braids, French curls are not protective style. In the moment that you add extensions, they are not protective style anymore.
I don't like braids. I don't like extensions. I don't like weaves. They can be really cute, but I'm not putting them in my hair anymore. And the reason why is there's a lot of breakage that happens.
She was wearing box braids back to back to back for over a couple of years, and in doing so, it caused her hair to become completely dried out, and it dried out to the point of no return.
If you feel like you're doing everything right in your haircare journey, but your hair still isn't growing, your protective styles might be the reason why. This was my hair 3 years ago, and this is my hair today, and I've made a lot of mistakes in my haircare journey, but the biggest one that I did was believing that back-to-back braids were the best way to protect my hair. But not all protective styles are damaging, so in this video, I'm going to be ranking the most common forms of protective styling so you know which ones to avoid and which one will help you reach your hair goals. These are the categories that we are going to be working with. At the very top, we have healthy waist length, and these are the best styles that you can do for your hair. They will help you retain length and will preserve the health of your hair. Then we have protective but, and this category is for protective hairstyles that are protective, but you need to be careful not to fall into common pitfalls. Then we have we need a trim, and this category is for hairstyles that will cause some mild breakage or dryness. You'll most likely have to trim your hair a little bit after taking these out. Then we have split ends everywhere, self-explanatory. These are going to cause noticeable damage. And at the very bottom, we have big chop. This is for hairstyles I would stay away from because they are aggressively damaging and they have little to no upside. Also important for me to mention, I am going to rank these hairstyles by the way that they are typically done. So of course, there are always ways that you can reduce the amount of damage that certain hairstyles can cause. But for the sake of simplicity, I am going to rank them using the typical installing method for each hairstyle. Starting off with box braids. And I found box braids to be a very interesting case because I think that they were seen as the ultimate protective hairstyle for years until recently a discussion was sparked and most people realized that they're actually extremely destructive. The main problems with box braids happen during the installation of the box braids. You are starting off on pretty dry hair because most braiders do not like you to apply any sort of leave-ins or moisturizing products, and on top of that your hair is wrapped into synthetic hair which is also drying. Another problem is that the weight of that synthetic hair is causing a lot of tension on your scalp and on your hair strands, especially around the hairline because some braiders like to also braid your edges. Something else that is very damaging to your hair and that I never see anyone actually talk about is the fact that they will dip your hair into boiling hot water, which is obviously going to cause a ton of split ends. To this point, I found this video in which the stylist theorizes that the reason why her client's hair is damaged is the hot water the synthetic hair is dipped in. Most people in her comment section were disagreeing with her, saying that hot water boils at a much lower temperature than flat irons are used at. Now, I am sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but those flat irons are damaging too. Anything that goes above 280 degrees Fahrenheit is going to compromise the structure of your hair. Furthermore, there is something called bubble hair, and I'm not going to explain what this is in detail, but I will link an Instagram post from a trichologist who does. It's essentially a form of damage that happens when high heat is applied to wet hair, so it's entirely possible that it is the hot water that caused this damage. Another big issue with box braids is that a lot of people will try to make them last as long as possible. And because they're trying to make them last as long as possible, they are not going to wash their hair, which is going to inflame your scalp. And at no point can you actually hydrate your hair because you're avoiding water at all costs. I guess the only plus to box braids is that they help you keep your hands out of your hair. So for all these reasons, I'm going to put box braids into split ends everywhere.
Do knotless braids. It's a protective style. Knotless braids are good for your hair. Yeah, Chomi, they make your hair grow. Knotless braids.
Knotless braids have a lot of the same issues that box braids do, but they're actually a lot safer for your hair for three reasons. Number one, because of the nature of the hairstyles, braiders will use less synthetic hair, which will cause less tension. I've also noticed that with knotless braids, they are less likely to try to braid your edges. I am going to put knotless braids in Winnie the Trim. The next hairstyle on my list is actually the worst one in this entire video. I genuinely believe that micro braids are one of the worst things that you could do to your hair. The biggest problem with micro braids is actually the takedown process. There are so many of them that you are likely to become frustrated and cause breakage to your hair. There is also way too much tension on each individual strand. I feel like the bigger the braid, the less hair the braider is going to add relative to the amount of hair that they're using. Does that make sense? I don't think that there is any pro to this hairstyle, so it's going into big chop. The next one on my list are boho braids, and I know that these are people favorite. I know that people love these, so please don't hate me, but I'm actually going to put them behind box braids in split ends everywhere, and that's because the curly added pieces actually add a lot of friction to your actual hair.
Ever get boho knotless braids? The amount of hair that came out while I was taking my braids out, the human hair just tangles and knots with your natural hair.
And they're even harder to moisturize than box braids. I feel like with box braids, you could make an attempt to. With boho braids, if you try to moisturize them, the hairstyle will get ruined, so you really can't. Next style is cornrows with extensions, and this is actually our most protective hairstyle so far. The reason why I'm putting cornrows in this category is because there is less synthetic hair that is used, so there is less tension on your scalp and on your hair. Also, the takedown is quicker, less frustrating with cornrows, so you're going to cause a lot less breakage. However, you need to be careful with not keeping them in for too long. If length retention and protecting your hair is your goal, avoid very small ones because they're going to behave the same way as box braids. Okay, next we have passion twists. I only had twists once in my life, and it might have been the braider's technique, but in my experience, your actual hair is likely to get exposed, if that makes sense, which is obviously going to be terrible for your hair. But to be fair, people don't keep these in as long as box braids. So again, because you're not keeping them for a very long time, you are more likely to moisturize and wash your scalp sooner. So they're going into split ends everywhere, just behind box braids. I think that crochet braids are very underrated when it comes to protective styling. A big difference between crochet braids and every other protective style that I have discussed so far is the fact that with crochet braids, you have a braided base, not using any sort of synthetic hair. This is very good because the hairstyle is not going to be as drying as other braided hairstyles. Your ends are also hidden and tucked away at all times, which is excellent. I am putting crochet braids in protective but, and that's because you should really try not to go too long with this style in your hair. I'm thinking 4 to 6 weeks max, and 6 weeks is really stretching it. There is very little access to your scalp with crochet braids, and so you are likely to develop buildup and to irritate your scalp. Also, it is easy to overload and put too much hair on top, so be mindful of that. Let's talk about sew-ins because the tier depends on the version. Now, the problem, generally speaking, with sew-ins is that people leave them in for too long and there is no access to your scalp, so you can properly wash or hydrate your hair. I'm putting closure sew-ins in Winnie the Trim, but leave-out sew-ins for me are going in split ends everywhere because of all the blending that is required. And the last hairstyle in this list is wigs, and I'm going to have very unpopular opinions about wigs because depending on whether you're using a frontal or a closure wig, I think that you might be doing one of the best or one of the worst thing to your hair. I have never worn frontal wigs, so maybe I'm uneducated, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But from what I've seen, people typically would put glue all over the hairline, which I think, even with an appropriate takedown method, cannot be good for your hairline.
Look at you. You're doing it. And you know what I'm gonna do?
So traction alopecia doesn't just come from tight braids and ponytails. If your wig is rubbing on your edges, you're going to get friction, and that's going to lead to traction alopecia.
A lot of people also get them done at the salon and get them installed professionally and keep them in for days or weeks at a time and just keep reapplying the glue every time they want to go out. On the other hand, closure wigs, and I have never worn a closure wig in my life, so this is not personal bias, but I think that closure wigs are only healthy waist length style in this video. And the only reason why is that people are more likely to remove closure wigs at night, so you have access to your actual hair and scalp at all times. There is no glue involved, so you're not doing anything to your hairline. It's just a closure. You are not manipulating your hair. Install can be very, very gentle, as can be takedown. I honestly think that this is one of the best protective hairstyle you can do for your hair. So it's going into healthy waist length. Again, I do not wear closure wigs. It just makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, that's my final ranking. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What has been your experience with these hairstyles? Please let me know down below. Check out this other video that YouTube thinks that you might like. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.